Hello and welcome to this new tutorial. Alright, back in our Atcoin ICO contract. In the previous tutorial we introduced the public variables that anyone will have access, including the persons outside of the contract. And now we're going to make a mapping from the investor address, so it will be like its public key, its public address, to both its equity in Atcoins and USD. So for example, if the investor has $1,000 invested in whatever platform that holds the Atcoins and runs the ICO, well, on this platform, the investor will have an equity of $1,000 and 1 million Atcoins, because $1 equals 1,000 Atcoins. So let's make this mapping, and actually we're going to make two mappings, because in order to get both these two equities in Atcoins and USD, well, we'll have to make two mappings. But before we make them, let's make sure we understand what exactly a mapping is. A mapping is like a function, but in which the data of the mapping is stored in an array. So it's not exactly like a function that takes a variable and returns an operation of this variable. It's more like an array in which we'll have the input variable, which will be the investor address, and which will return for each of these addresses the equity. So one of these mapping will return the equity in Atcoins, and the other mapping will return the equity in USD. And so now to make a mapping in Solidity, we simply start with mapping, then some parentheses, and then in these parentheses we must input first the type of the input, which is an address, because the input will be the address of the investor, and an address is a type in Solidity, as we can see here. So we first enter here the input type, which is address. Then we add an arrow like this, and then eventually the type of the output, which will be a U integer, because we want to return the equity, and the equity is, of course, an integer. We'll not be able to invest some dollar cents. So it's just going to be an integer, and therefore that's what we have to specify here, the type, which is again a uint. Okay, and then that's not over. Here, that's where you have to give the name of the variable that will contain the value returned by this mapping, taking the address as argument as its input. And so the name of this variable will be, we can say, the equity in Atcoins, just like that. So we define the mapping, taking as input the address of the investor, which will return an integer as the type of the variable returned, and the name of this variable returned will be equity Atcoins, getting the equity in Atcoins of the investor. Alright, and then let's not forget the semicolon, especially when you're used to Python. Okay, and now we're going to define the second mapping. So I just selected this and copied it, and just below I'm pasting it. Alright, and so this second mapping is of course a mapping from the address of the investor, still returning a variable of type integer, but this time this variable returned will not be the equity in Atcoins, but in US dollars. So equity USD. And alright, congratulations, you defined your first mapping in Solidity. So that was a no-brainer, quite easy. We just made like some arrays that basically make a mapping from the investor's addresses to their equity in both Atcoins and USD. Alright, so we're making some good progress. Then in the next tutorial we'll make a modifier. What is a modifier? A modifier is something that will check if an investor can buy or sell some Atcoins. He or she will always be able to sell some Atcoins, no problem about that, but this person will not be able to buy some Atcoins if there are not any Atcoins left. So we'll have to make this modifier to check that there are still some Atcoins left, and if that's the case, the modifier will give it okay for the investor to buy some Atcoins. So we'll make this in the next tutorial, and until then, enjoy blockchains.